Hey guys, thank you for tuning in. I've got some more to discuss about the Trump education system. So, this is my part two. One thing that we all have realized pretty quickly with this particular administration is that things are consistently changing all the time, right? There's an overflow of information coming out every day. So, of course, I've got more things to speak about on the education system, some changes, another presidential action that was signed. And then, if you checked out the prior video, there are a few more elaborations I would like to make on those points. So, check that out. Then come check this one out. Once again, all the receipts and resources are linked within the video description. Always research on your own as well. Okay, let's start by going over the Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. This is the presidential action that was signed on March 27th. Listed here, the purpose is basically it's stating that over the past decade, which I'm pretty sure he was the president within the last decade. I don't know. I've slept since then, so who knows? I could be wrong. Americans have witnessed a concerted and widespread effort to rewrite irony, sense the irony there, our history. It's stating that the current system has been altered and revised to undermine the U.S. achievements, casting doubt on founding principles and historical milestones and casting them in a negative light. It's not teaching the legacy of our advancing liberty, individual rights, and human happiness, stating that our history is inherently racist, sexist, and oppressive, and otherwise irredeemably flawed. Let's pause right there. First, American history is inherently racist, sexist, and oppressive. There's no way that you can wipe out the truth on how this country was colonized, then built, and developed off of the backs of indigenous and African people. I do believe the history is irredeemably flawed, but that's only because we can't change history. It's not to say that it isn't possible for us to redeem ourselves as a nation for our future, not technically making us irredeemable as a society. I digress. That's my little dream of utopia. The first step, I'm pretty sure, of redeeming ourselves as a nation is not going to be to deny, which is what this administration is trying to do. It is trying to whitewash our history. Furthermore, the presidential action itself elaborates the racial reference I made in my first video when I pointed out my concern of the change in February as a career and technical education month, yet that month is supposed to be dedicated to Black history. This action also reinstates pre-existing monuments and memorials or similar properties that were removed after January 1st of 2020. They state it's because it basically perpetuates a false reconstruction of our history. And there's an estimated over 200 different Confederate symbols that's been removed since 2020. Whether those are going to be put back up or reinstated, I'm not sure. Some of them were actually approved by the court system, and others were approved through political avenues. So right here, it talks about the National Museum of African American History and Culture has proclaimed that hard work, individualism, and nuclear family are aspects of white culture. The forthcoming Smithsonian American History Museum plans on celebrating the exploits of male athletes participating in women's sports. So these are two big things that are pointed out within this action. No, he's not racist. And no, he's not against the trans people, though, right? No monuments are to contain any kind of descriptions or depictions or content that disparages American past or living, including people from the colonial times. Do you need more proof of racism?
In February, President Trump ousted the center's longtime chair, David Rubenstein, made himself chair of the board. Trump also fired longtime president Deborah Rutter. Last week, the Kennedy Center fired at least 7 members of its social impact initiative, including its vice president, artistic director, the renowned artist Mark Bamuthi Joseph. The team aimed to expand the Art Center's reach to diverse audiences, to commission new works by Black composers. The job terminations come weeks after President Trump took over the Kennedy Center and also appointed his allies, including his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, to the board, and her mother, and Second Lady Usha Vance, and 2 hosts on Fox News, Laura Ingraham and Maria Bartiromo. Mark Bamuthi Joseph recorded this video from his office just after he was fired.
Well, I am sitting in my office at the Kennedy Center one last time. It's funny, I'm taking things down like this red, black, and green American flag and this extraordinary piece of artwork that my man Greg made that honors Stevie Wonder, and this poster from BAM, and a commemorative album that was organized by Swiss Beats. Basically, I'm taking down everything Black in my office, just as the new leadership of the Kennedy Center is doing its best to disavow much of the literal color that has made this place special. I'm grieving and angry, and also ready to be rid of the moral injury that has come with being in this place. It's hard to say goodbye, but it isn't hard to say goodbye to an oppressive situation. So may liberation be my liturgy. I'm proud of what we made here. We will always have an impact.
Trump wanted to undo diversity programs within the military, scrubbing our history and culture of the Tuskegee Airmen and the Women Air Force Service Pilots, or WASPs. Now, this has since been revoked, right? And so the history is now included. But this is what is indicative of the administration. You can't tell me that that wasn't deliberate. The immediate calling for the revisions of our history is kind of crazy. Like being a journalist that gets a oops text about war plans. They want to do things and don't care what it takes. But when they do and realize it may come back at them, they deny, deny, deny. Just like Trump, quote unquote, didn't sign the deportation papers to Venezuela.
The judge wanted to know why this proclamation was essentially signed in the dark on Friday night, early Saturday morning. When a reporter posed that very question to the president, Trump said he couldn't answer when the act was signed because he didn't sign it.
I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it. But Marco Rubio's done a great job, and he wanted him out, and we go along with that.
Moments later, Trump again deferred to Secretary of State Marco Rubio when he was asked if he could deport people using that same policy right now.
I would say that I'd have the Secretary of State handle it because I'm not really involved in that.
However, when it comes to this issue of signature or no signature, if you look at the proclamation invoking this wartime power over the weekend, it's on the White House's website. It is listed as a presidential action, and it reads, by the President of the United States of America. But even further than that, when you look at the version that is filed in the National Register, it bears President Trump's recognizable signature right there at the bottom. The White House put out this statement. Says President Trump was obviously referring to the original Alien Enemies Act that was signed back in 1798. The recent executive order was personally signed by President Trump invoking the Alien Enemies Act that designated Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization in order to apprehend and deport these heinous criminals.
Fun little addition. This action also mentions the creation of a National Garden of American Heroes, because that's an efficient way of spending taxpayer money. Furthermore, there is a clear attack on colleges and universities. They are targeting those institutions that have experienced protesting against the war in Gaza. They have deported students that were involved in those protests. Yale, Harvard, and Columbia have removed staff due to the pressures by Trump. Losing funding is a huge motivator for the removals. The complacency of these schools is so detrimental that even Jewish Yale faculty signed a letter denouncing Trump's attacks. Some faculty have even resigned in their own protest.
Columbia University's president, Katrina Armstrong, had only had this job since August. Now she is resigning amid accusations that she folded too quickly to the Trump administration. Last week, Columbia announced that it would carry out a list of reforms demanded by the federal government, including giving campus police arrest powers and new oversight for the Department of Middle East Studies. That was in order to begin the process of restoring $400 million of annual federal grants that the Trump administration canceled for Columbia. That's about a fifth of its operating budget. And this punishment was for alleged anti-Semitism and for the university's response to encampment protesters who had been demonstrating against Israel's war in Gaza. There is no guarantee that this federal money will be restored to Columbia, but Armstrong was recently praised by Trump's education secretary for agreeing to the government's demands. Many of Columbia's faculty, though, were not happy about what they viewed as their president's acquiescence, without even so much as a legal battle. And there's also concern that this will further embolden the Trump administration to go after other universities, which it already has. Heidi Jo Castro, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Then there are those going to Canada.
We're seeing this culture of fear, this idea that if we just do what they say, everything will be okay. But I'm seeing this everywhere. And it's one reason that I am probably leaving the United States to the University of Toronto.
Really? You feel strongly enough about this that you are going to leave the country?
Yes.
This is the author of How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them. If anybody understands how fascism works, it's the guy that wrote a book on how fascism works.
Another point that I wanted to make about the threat of removing federal funding is that the majority of said funding goes to the red states. The financial cuts to the budget that I spoke about in the last video is going to affect those who voted for the Orange King. They have literally bit their nose off to spite their face. Now, for the elephant in the room. For those who did not see the correlation between Hitler and the Orange King, let me just elaborate. Let's go over to the Nuremberg trials. According to the translation of the Nuremberg trial documentation, this particular document was written by Hitler himself. It is the 25-point Nazi Party program. So let me just read a little bit here. The program is the political foundation of the NSDAP, and accordingly, the primary political law of the state. It has been made brief and clear intentionally. All legal precepts must be applied in the spirit of the party program. Since taking over control, the Führer has succeeded in the realization of essential portions of the party program, from the fundamentals to the detail. The party program of the NSDAP was proclaimed on the 24th of February 1920 by Adolf Hitler at the first large party gathering in Munich, and since that day has remained unaltered. Within the National Socialist philosophy is summarized in the 25 points. In relation to education, I'm going to go ahead and scroll on down to point number 20. Let's go ahead and read that one. The state is to be responsible for a fundamental reconstruction of our whole national education program to enable every capable and industrious German to obtain higher education and adequately introduction into leading positions. The plans of instruction of all educational institutions are to conform with the experiences of practical life. The comprehension of the concept of the state must be striven for by the school as early as the beginning of understanding. We demand the education at the expense of the state. So basically, Hitler reconstructed the education system to teach a particular ideology that he wanted, right, in the Nazi Party. That's where I'm bringing this back. He is wanting to control as much as he possibly can. He wants to control the historical narrative. History should be nothing but truth. Going over to the American Holocaust Museum. These boys and girls enter our organizations at 10 years of age, and often for the first time get a little fresh air. After 4 years of the young folk, they go on to the Hitler Youth, where we have them for another 4 years. And even if they are still not complete National Socialists, they go on to labor service and are smoothed out there for another 6, 7 months. And whatever class consciousness or social status might still be left, the Weimarite, German armed forces will take care of that. The sense of nationalism. This here indicates propaganda discussing how a mentally ill person, 16 years in an institution, and what it cost the citizens of Germany. Does that sound familiar? When it comes to immigrants, do they not complain about the cost? So how can you help? Well, you can call your elected officials. You can attend school board meetings. Even if you don't currently have children in the education system, you should be paying attention to what is going on in your school district. Part of your taxes go toward public education, and these children will graduate high school, maybe go on to a trade school or college, maybe not, but they're going to move into positions within our communities. These kids will be our future, and it's likely that at some point in your life, you're going to depend on them for some form of service or patron their business. They are our future, so it is very important that you get involved in the education system. Also, support organizations like the National Education Association. They fight for public schools and have ways for you to get involved. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and listening to what I have to say. Like, subscribe, share, come back for more. Have a great day, everyone.